Hi everyone, William here. It is Monday, the 2nd of February 2026. This is the Grand Duke Dmitri Diary series, and we are in 1917. So specifically, in the last video, we finished up with the short diary entries for the week and did the 11th through the 14th of November. They were pretty routine. The only thing unusual, well, sort of unusual, that happened was that there was another showdown with Lady Marling, and this time Dmitri actually gave her an ultimatum because, as he put it, she was being stupid, saying that I am in all my actions showing how very pleased I am to finally be rid of her, so on and so forth. And he told her, okay, I will move to a hotel. And yeah, she didn't call his bluff. I don't know if it was a bluff, but anyway, that is what we covered. And now we're up to a new one of the long and fascinating diary entries in which Dmitri really talks about what he thinks and what's going on. So we're doing 24th of November 1917, which was a Friday. And here we go. Strange though it seems, strictly speaking, the situation in Petrograd is still obscure and completely undecided. Naturally, all power there and in Moscow is in the hands of the Maximalists, but apparently this new government is working under strange conditions. It is not recognized by the countries of the alliance. Then, as far as one can determine, there are newspaper reports that even Wilhelm has refused entrée en pourparlers with a government like the one that is now in charge of Russia, a government that does not enjoy the support of the whole country. The situation at headquarters has so far not changed. Dukhonin hasn't given up his post as leader. There were rumors that he had been killed. Then reports spread that he had chosen his own replacement in the person of General Shcherbachev, who commands the army on the Romanian front. But together with that hazy situation, there is now the question, which in my opinion will play a huge role in the history of our 20th century time of troubles. The question is, here in Tehran, officially, but in great secrecy, a deputation has come from General Przhevalsky, the commander of the Caucasian army. The deputation came to pass along the desire of the Caucasian army to continue the war, despite the fact that Lenin's government is negotiating a peace. The deputation was made up of 3 men: General Staff Colonel Kharitonov, active State Councilor Lesnyak, the main blank of the Caucasian army, and a young Armenian financier Bunatian. Since Kharitonov did most of the talking, I will write about him here. The desire of the Caucasian army is to continue the war at whatever cost. But because doing that requires means, and the means are not available in the Caucasus, Przhevalsky decided to turn to England for support. Strictly speaking, one cannot say that the whole Caucasian army wishes to continue the war, because it now consists of 60% Russian troops who are generally unwilling to fight any longer. It's more precise to say that the Caucasians themselves, i.e. the Muslim population and then the Armenians and Georgians, wish it. Okay, I'm going to stop there, even though the diary entry continues talking about this issue, but I don't want to go too long and let things get too complicated before commenting. So we can start with the strange situation in Petrograd. It's not really strange. You know, Dmitri's been following it all along. He acknowledged in a previous diary entry that Petrograd and Moscow were now both controlled by the Bolsheviks, or the Maximalists, as he calls them. And it's not surprising that the government is working under strange conditions, as he puts it. Yeah, the countries of the Allied countries are not going to recognize a state, a government in Russia that doesn't want to continue the war. This idea that William II, Wilhelm, had refused to enter negotiations with a government like the Bolsheviks is, yeah, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if there was ever a point in which William said, I'm not going to speak to these people. Certainly, the policy that was being pursued on the ground, so to speak, and in actual practice was that, yes, the Germans were negotiating for Russia to sign a separate peace. So that was ongoing. Yeah, I mean, just for point of reference, this sort of hazy government situation would continue. The power, the Bolshevik power, would continue to consolidate, but the Civil War would then happen, and there would not be, the Soviet Union wouldn't come into existence until 1922, and then other countries started recognizing it as a legitimate government. And I'm pretty sure that before 1922, there were already trade agreements, and there were already visits from Soviet government or pre-Soviet government representatives to other countries, and those diplomats being received, at least with respect to trade agreements. Okay, anyway, moving on from that, it's very interesting here that Dmitri says that the situation at headquarters has not changed, and that Dukhonin hasn't given up his post as leader, i.e. supreme commander of the Russian military. Well, and then he notes that it's rumors. He states this as fact, that Dukhonin is still the supreme commander, but says that there was a rumor that he'd been killed. Well, actually, unfortunately, quite the opposite was true. By the time Dmitri wrote this on the 24th, Dukhonin had been dead for 2 days. So those were not rumors, that was fact. And he had not been able to choose his own replacement, General Dmitri Shcherbachov, Dmitri Grigorievich Shcherbachov. He'd not taken over. The person who had taken over was a revolutionary, was a long-standing revolutionary without a military background. I mean, a very superficial one, by the name of Krylenko. Okay. So in that case, yes, the rumor was correct. The supposedly factual information was incorrect. Shcherbachov was quite an interesting and rather heroic figure. He was in Romania, and he took a stand there. He took an anti-Bolshevik stand, and he would continue throughout the Civil War to do that. He would probably have been a very good supreme commander, but it was not to be. All right, so Dmitri concludes this with a reference to our 20th century time of troubles. So that's alluding to a specific event in Russian history after the death of Ivan the Terrible, Ivan IV, with no successor. Russia was plunged into this 30-year, I think, time period where there was no, there were lots of people claiming to be the Tsar, claiming the role of Tsar. There was no one who was accepted in that role. There were incursions from Poland and Lithuania. I think it's been a long time since I've reviewed this. But it was called the Smuta, the time of troubles, because, yeah, there were all these opportunistic figures popping up. There was the false Dmitri, who claimed to be the living son of Ivan the Terrible. Dmitri, the real one, had been killed as a boy of 9. And this man, I think he was Polish, claimed to be that Dmitri. Yeah, it was just a big mess, and it concluded with the election to the Russian throne of the first Romanov, Mikhail, in 1613. Anyway, that is what Dmitri is referring to, and I think accurately saying this is, for Russia, a 20th century time of troubles that would continue on through the Civil War. Okay, so what has happened in Persia? Well, a deputation has been sent, Dmitri says officially, but in great secrecy. Okay, so they have officially been sent by General Przhevalsky, who was at that time, as Dmitri rightly states, the commander of the Caucasian army. I think he had been since maybe the time of the February Revolution in 1917. And so, yeah, he chose these 3 men to go and enter into talks with the British in Persia, in Iran. So very interesting. And one of the things that's really worth noting with this is that Dmitri was included. He did not just hear about this from Sir Charles. He was part of it. And that interests me very much because, it makes sense. He was the Romanov, the one and only, who was not under Bolshevik control there in Tehran. And so, oh, boys, I hate this. Duke and Crispin, come here. Anyway, that being the case, it would have been a huge insult to non-Bolshevik Russia, to all of non-Bolshevik Russia, all the people who were not Bolsheviks in Russia, to have snubbed the only Romanov who could speak freely without any kind of Bolshevik control. So yeah, it's quite natural that he was included. It would have been strange if that hadn't been the case. Oh, sorry, that was such a big distraction. Now I have to collect my thoughts. All right, so the other members of the deputation were Sergei Kharitonov. So, as Dmitri says, a Genstabist, a general staff officer, a colonel who was active in the region with the Caucasian army. Active State Councilor Lesniak, the main field something of the Caucasian army, so obviously a civilian. Yeah, I unfortunately don't have anything to tell you about him. Do I have a name on him? No. Kharitonov was Sergei, but I don't have a name on Lesniak. Sounds like an interesting figure. And then this young Armenian financier, Bunatian. So what was going on with this? Well, Dmitri gives this very precise figure. I wonder where it came from. That, not that I'm saying it's wrong, that 60% of the Russian troops in the Caucasus, or 60% of the Russian army in the Caucasus, are ethnically Russian troops, and that those troops did not want to continue fighting. They wanted to go back. They wanted to go home to their families and to their farms or whatever they had there in Russia. Hard to blame them for that. They didn't feel invested in this fight in the Caucasus. But other people did. So the other 40%, and also civilians in the region, Muslims who were anti-Turk, Armenians, obviously anti-Turk, Georgians, they didn't want Turkey to make territorial gains into the Caucasus, and so they wanted to keep fighting. So they were natural allies of the white Russian troops at that time, who were not yet called white or Tsarist Russian troops. Yeah, so what was I going to say about that? Good Lord, the dogs have thoroughly frazzled me. Yeah, so Dmitri has referred to this before when he talked about Baratov suggesting that he should go and join the 1st Caucasian Corps, who would be fighting alongside the British Army, not in the Caucasus, but in Mesopotamia. So we still haven't heard from him. Obviously, he didn't end up taking that position, but we still haven't heard from him as to, when he finalized that decision and why. We'll be hearing about that, I'm sure. Anyway, this was a real thing. The British did want to support this. I'm stumbling a bit because I don't have a lot of detail about it, and I should have done more research before diving into this. But yeah, the British wanted to protect their position in that whole region, especially in Mesopotamia. So, very interesting stuff overall. And what do we have next time? Well, next time we're gonna slide right into more of this, specifically with Dmitri talking about the result of the deputation and how it was received by the British. So, yeah, I guess that's when I'll be talking more about that. And I hope to see you then. All right, bye.